Hello, my name is Josiah Shan, and if you want to know more about Miranda's book and the Episcopal Actors Guild's Black Voices event, please watch this video. I first fell in love with theater. Had to be probably 6 or 7 years old. My great grandmother, who's deceased now, she took me to see Annie. That was the very first show that I ever saw in a theater, and first of all, just the talent that was on that stage was absolutely incredible. But the idea, I didn't know this at the time. The more I got into theater, I discovered it. The idea of all these people coming together and creating this wonderful piece of visual art that so many people loved because that theater was full. That theater was packed out. So having just that ability to create these things that bring people from all different walks of life, different races, genders, colors, creeds, religious, political affiliations, it doesn't matter. We all come together and we agree to suspend our own realities to be immersed in somebody else's. And I think that that is an incredible thing to do. It's one thing to be able to write a book. It's one thing to be able to go see a movie. Those things are very private and personal, and I love those things. But creating these works of art that bring together thousands upon thousands of people is just an incredible thing. That's why I loved it. How I knew I wanted to be a part of it. I originally wanted to be an actor because you see the people on the stage and you're like, oh, this is amazing. I never once considered that there were people who wrote the words that they said. I in my young imagination, just thought that they just got up there and just kind of like improvised it. But when I realized that there were people who created these texts and these amazing works of literary art that, people from Shakespeare to August Wilson, they take time to really create these wonderful pieces of literary creativity. I had to explore that. Um, so that's pretty much how I got into it. Becoming a writer is just this passion that's inside of me, I guess. It's an easy way of describing it. Just this drive to write and create. My first experience with writing, at least for myself, not like something in school or something. My first experience with writing for my own leisure, pleasure, release was my grandmother gave me a journal when I was about 9 years old. And I won't go into the nuances of the reasons why, but my family was going through a really rough time. And I don't know if she did this with any of my mother's other children. I have 4 brothers and sisters. But she gave me the journal, and inside of it, and I just remember distinctly this most beautiful cursive I've ever seen in my life. She just was telling me a little bit of her story and a little bit of her life, and I'm like 8. But the one thing that stood out to me was that she just said to write, just keep writing. It was that there's the only way that you can get this stuff out and not have to hold it inside of you. Just go out and write. You're not going to always have someone to talk to. You're not going to always have space to scream, but you always have a space and a time where you can write. That was probably one of the biggest pushes for me to write. When it became an obsession, um, I would have to say probably around the time I started college. I actually started college pretty late. I graduated 18. I didn't go to college until I was 23. So it's not that late, but I took a pretty big gap between high school and college. And when I got here, I'm studying drama and theater at Norfolk State University. When I got here, there was so much talent and so much ability. And as I spoke with a lot of the actors, one of the things that they were telling me was that they just felt there were not a lot of roles that really felt that who they were was taken into consideration. I go to an HBCU, that's a historically Black college and university. So there were a lot of, Black actors around me who just didn't feel like they were incorporated in any area of this art form. And I couldn't say they were wrong. There are roles for us out there, but they're very small, very few, and very far between. So that's when I really thought that, I might be able to do some good, on the other side of it. And I've always loved storytelling, all different types of storytelling, novels, short films, short stories, things like that. But yeah, I think that's when I started to really begin to explore it and really just fell in love with it from there. Just being able to create these characters and create these situations and these conversations that mirror the real world. It's just it's an incredibly powerful thing. So I guess that's when I probably became obsessed with it, was when I started college, and it's held for quite a while. And I think that one thing that's true about every society is that they were able to maintain who they were, not just for the current generation, but all the generations that would come through the stories they told. That was how they connected with one another. That's how they, the literary history of history is that people were telling stories. I think that now we live in a world and a time where there are so many people who have historically been disenfranchised and discounted. Their stories, their lives, their experiences have all been made to seem as though they were unimportant for a multitude of reasons. Now we have all of those people rushing to the front line saying, I have this story and I have this experience. And the world, and there are so many people who have experienced what I experienced, and they would pull on this story. It's something that you have to tell. I think it's important because there is a multitude of life and different experiences that's out there, and we have to hear them. We have to know those stories. We have to immortalize those people, because the things that we experience and go through are universal in a lot of ways, but they're also unique in a lot of ways. So we have to make sure that our own individual stories and the stories of people who look like and feel like us are told and are honored. So I think that's why it's very important. I completely agree with you that situations like Hamilton should be the rule and not the exception. I think that when you have a space where anyone and everyone is welcome, and it's not based on how you look or what you look like or if you fit the bill or the role type, but it's just looking for incredibly gifted and talented and passionate and driven people who want to make amazing theater. I think when that becomes the norm, when it's really just about the production of great theater, I think that we'll be on our way. And I think that we're getting closer and closer to that space every day. And I'm so excited to live in this time and space where I can be a part of I like to think of it as a new renaissance for theater and the creative arts as a whole. So my writing process really begins with some sort of dream, or I don't want to say vision, but this is something I see that I think I'm the only person that sees it in that unique way. What I will do is I'll sit with that idea for probably around 3 months. And my rule is if it comes back to me and it keeps coming back to me, nagging me, it's something I have to pursue. If it doesn't, then it's probably just one of those fly by the seat, passing moments that is not really that important. It's not really a good story. So if after a couple months it's still sitting with me, then I sit down and I usually will write a letter as whatever character is in my mind, whatever characters are in my mind. I'll write in their voice or whatever their voices I'm developing for them. Some people will do these whole biographies and things like that. Sometimes I do that. I do find that it does help, but it doesn't always. Sometimes I think it just really just wastes a lot of time. That's just my opinion. That's not a criticism on them. So I'll write a letter in their voice, and then I'll begin to think about the situation that I want to put them in. And how, again, I'll go away and I'll think about it for a couple weeks, and I'll begin to outline, and I'll write the major beats and the different plot points that I think need to happen within the piece. And then I just kind of tackle it. And I'll write for a couple hours. I find that my most creative hours are between 4 and 7 a.m. I don't know why God gave me that, but he did. So I usually find that between those hours is when I do the most of my creative work. I'll write, a couple of pages, of maybe 10, 20 pages a day, and then I'll take a couple of days off. I'll come back to it, read it, and see if it makes sense. And I pretty much do that until I have a draft. Once I have a draft, I'll send it to somebody, send it to friends, send it to colleagues, and see what they think about it, get their feedback, go back into it, do another draft. I'm so grateful for this opportunity because this is the first time one of my works has been presented. I have a lot of works that just are just sitting in my computer or just haven't been presented because, time and conflict, whatever. This is the first one that's actually being presented, so I'm very, very excited about that. So this will be the first time I actually get to that finish line, I guess. But up until now, that is basically what my process is, basically just going from conception to a lot of thinking and working in your mind and writing it down and then producing something and seeing what people think of it. So I first heard about Episcopal Actors Guild through a friend, through Facebook. They had posted for this event on Facebook, and a friend of mine follows a playwriting group on there. So she sent it to me, and when I heard what they were doing and the specificity of incorporating Black voices into this festival, I just had to be a part of it. I have a couple of 10-minute plays, and they said they were looking for 1 act to 10-minute plays. And from Black writers, I said, well, that sounds like me. So I went and just submitted some things to them. They liked Miranda's book, and we went from there. So this is my very first experience with them, and it's been wonderful. They're incredible. I love working with creative people. I love working with people who are established in the industry, and with people who are making the promotion and I'd say the promotion of Black voices a major aspect of what they're doing. And this is definitely one of those. So I'm very, very grateful to be able to work with people who are making us a priority. So the idea for Miranda's book actually came from a playwriting guidebook. It was Stuart Spencer's The Playwrights Guide, I believe is the name of the book. Basically, he just wrote as an exercise, write a scene in which one character wants something from another character. That was all the evidence, that was all the information he gave, and you had to just develop a scene from it. I think I looked to the left and saw a book, and I said, okay, well, let's try a book. So I guess that was the grassroots of it. As I began to write it, the characters began to obviously, expose themselves to me and show me who they were and what the situation was, what the relationship was. And it really developed into something that I think was kind of quirky, kind of fun. It has a little bit of serious undertone to it, given the reason why Miranda goes to his house for the book. But mostly it's just a story of her just getting back what's hers, and in the physical, literal, and metaphoric sense. So I think the reason why I felt I had to write it was because, one, it was the assignment, and also because it, as I began to write it, it just became much more interesting to me. It became so interesting, and I was like, yeah, let's see what's going on here. So the main story arc of Miranda's book is late at night. It's about 3 o'clock in the morning. Miranda storms to her ex-boyfriend's apartment, and she's banging on the door because she wants this book from him. And he's completely oblivious to the fact that that's what she really wants. He thinks she came over for something else. I won't say what it is, but that's what he thinks she came over for. And she really came over for the book. And then when we get into the scene, we realize that the reason she came for it was a tragedy. It's hit her family, and it's required her to need it. I don't really want to give away what it is. I want people to actually go and watch it. But so we get into a little bit of the serious nature of why she came, and also what happened in their relationship and why they're no longer together. So throughout the course of it, they sort of get to a place where they're able to actually talk about what happened and why they're in the space they're in now. And in the end, she does get the book in what I think is a funny way. So we'll see if people agree with it. So the actors for this, I'm so excited, are two of my fellow classmates. As I said before, I'm at Norfolk State University studying drama and theater. Treasure Coles will be playing the role of Miranda, and Xavier Andrew will be playing the role of Franklin. And I'm just so grateful to be able to work with them. Also, another student, Nate Bush, will be directing this project. So I'm grateful to be able to be in a space where I'm surrounded by so many people who have gifts and talents that maybe I don't have, because that's how these things are created. You get a writer who can write, you get a director who can direct, you get an actor who can act, and then you have a story, and then you add the other elements of lighting and sound and set and costuming. But it does take a village. It takes a village, and it's amazing to be around people who are at the same level I'm at. We're all just these unknowns who, we're trying to establish ourselves as writers, actors, directors in this world, and we know it's a difficult path, but it's one that's so necessary and so worth it. So I'm very, very excited to have the cast that I have. I'm excited to be able to give opportunities to people who need them. As I said before, the reason I got into writing was to create spaces and opportunities for disenfranchised people, and to have 2 actors of color, 2 Black actors on the stage, and the stories about them is so important. So I'm very, very grateful for Treasure Coles and Xavier Andrew and Nate Bush for joining me on this project. I think the message for the audience to get out of this place, don't be afraid to go to your ex's house if they have something of yours. Honestly, that's pretty much all that there is going on. But it also it's a play that's about confronting the issue and really being able to speak about it. And we see throughout the course of it that it goes from this really aggressive, frustrated conversation to a really vulnerable and just open one. And I think that that is so important, especially now. We're looking at so many frustrated interactions between people. We see people just yelling and screaming at each other, and this way's right and that way's right, and you need to listen to me and I need to listen to you, and I'm suffering so I'm important. No, I'm suffering so I'm important. And I think that if we get to a place that if we can just sit down and recognize that we're all in pain, that we're not in competition with one another, that we're not trying to outdo one another, at least I hope we're not anyway, I think we'll be on our way to a much more peaceful society. And I hope going into 2021, we can really incorporate some more understanding and listening as opposed to speaking and just interjecting between one another. So I think that's what they get from it, is just sit and talk with one another and get through it and get to the other side of it. And whatever's on the other side, we go from there. But right now we're just so stuck in the in between that it's awful. It's the only way I can think to describe it. What I'm looking to hear, I'm hoping to get a whole bunch of feedback and to get a whole bunch of just interaction with people. I would have loved to interact with some of the other playwrights and some of the other directors and actors just to be able to speak with them about this project. Because of social distancing and the nature of it, I don't really know anybody else. So I'm excited for the day of the performance, because I get to see so many other works that are by other, playwrights of color, and incorporate those stories of people of color in them. So I'm hoping that from this, a lot more events like this happen, that they grow, they become bigger and become these huge festivals. And hopefully when the world gets back to normal, they'll be in person. But for now, we have the technology and the ability to keep creating theater. It is not going anywhere. I love that. So I hope that EAG continues to do more things like this in the interim until we can get back to our regularly scheduled theatrical productions. You must watch, because, oh God, it's so necessary. I think that's the only way I can describe it. I don't want to tell anyone what they should and shouldn't do, but if we're hoping to get to a place in our society where we not only acknowledge that people exist, but we celebrate them, we listen to them, we understand them, then we have to support events like this. It's one thing to support a multi-million-dollar film that gets put out, but there are people at the grassroots. There are people at the beginning stages of their career who their stories, their voices, their experiences still need to be heard. And EAG and the Black Voices event is doing an incredible work of getting those voices out there in the world. So it is so important for all of us, people of color and beyond, to support these small organizations and these programs and events that are really doing the work of making sure that the industry of theater becomes more diverse, more inclusive, more open, and more accepting. So please, please come and support the EAG Black Voices event, because it is a very necessary event. Would I love to see my work produced in the theater? Absolutely. That's a 2 thumbs way up. I would love that. I would have loved for this to be in a theater, but as we know, we're living in a very tumultuous time right now, and it's wonderful that we are still able to create theater and literary and these works of art, even though we have these parameters around us that say we can't be in the room together. We can still be in a space together, which is a wonderful thing. But yes, I would love to be able to see the actors up on their feet and the whole set and lights, and that would be wonderful. And one day I will get there. I'm completely confident in my ability to produce great theater. And once the world opens back up, I completely intend, whether I'm producing it or someone else is, to get these works produced. So yeah, I would absolutely love that. Mm-hmm. Organizations like this are so important, like the EAG are so important, because again, they give the opportunity to people who would not get it anywhere else. Honestly, it's very hard to break into the commercial theater world. So you really do have to show and prove that you have done some good work outside before they'll let you in, which makes sense, they're the professional world. So groups like this give opportunities to those playwrights, and the communities that support show that there is a need and a want for the stories that they're telling. So if we, for instance, if we put this on and nobody watches it, then we can't say that we're serving the underrepresented community because nobody came to see it. But if we sell out, or this streams and we get 500, 1,000 people to watch it, hopefully more, then what we're showing is that on a small scale, when engaged, people of a different community will respond, and that shows the people who have more money and more ability to network and to communicate with different groups of people. It shows them that, hey, we're missing a group of people that we could be helping, and we could be engaging with. So it's important for them to support. It's not only important for these things to happen, but important for them to support it, because when they support it, they show that it deserves to be supported. My name is Josiah Shan. If you enjoyed this interview, please go to the Episcopal Actors Guild website to learn where you can get tickets to the Black Voices event that is happening November 19th at 7 p.m. It's going to be a wonderful night of exploring stories told by Black writers through the lens of Black voices. So please come out and support us so we can show that we deserve more space in this industry.